Welcome to my annual video where I round up my favorite movies of the past year and I discuss them while wearing a completely normal hairpiece. But as always, before I start, I have a few honorable mentions that just missed the cut that I want to give a shout out to. Begonia, Eddington, We're All Gonna Die, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, The Surfer, 28 Years Later, Freaky Tales, Ephus, The Ballad of Wallace Island, and It Was Just an Accident. And there's still some acclaimed movies from 2025 that I haven't gotten around to seeing yet. There they are up on screen there. You got them all? Good. So with all that out the way, here's my top 10 favorite movies of 2025. Number 10, Caught Stealing. This movie about a slacker being thrust into a serious situation that spirals out of control, with a tone that blends dark moments with crime caper comedy, gave me heavy Coen Brothers vibes, specifically The Big Lebowski. And maybe in the past I might have been more critical of a work like this that feels derivative of the Coen Brothers. But nowadays you got one Coen brother making Denzel Washington Shakespeare movies, and the other Coen brother is making movies that feel like a film student that's trying to poorly emulate the Coen brothers. So kudos to Darren Aronofsky for putting his own spin on that vibe in a way that works. Caught Stealing breezes along with a frantic pace and a kooky, zany supporting cast. It's nothing particularly original, but I just had a lot of fun with it. I'm also addicted to the part where Austin Butler dances to the song I Am a Bitch, I'm a Lover, but it's still only the second best use of that song in a piece of media in 2025. Number 9, I Swear. When I first heard that there was a movie about a guy with Tourette's living in Scotland in the 80s, my first reaction was, doesn't a guy that loudly blurts out swear words kind of blend in with everybody else in Scotland? But this true story really shows the hardships the poor man went through in a time when people were ignorant to the disorder. The lead actor was exceptional, and the movie was quite stressful and upsetting, but it also made me laugh out loud quite a few times, and the last act was truly heartwarming in a way that felt earned, and I just think it's quite an important movie to watch. Number 8, One Battle After Another. This is another one that brought the Coen brothers to mind, while also still having Paul Thomas Anderson's scent all over it in his second adaptation of a Thomas Pynchon novel. This movie is shot beautifully with some great set pieces, and I really like the musical score. I also really liked a lot of the performances. I especially loved Benicio del Toro in it. I thought he was such a fun character. Now, I'm aware that I have this movie a lot lower on my list than most other people do, and that's because I did have a few issues with it. But I did really like One Battle After Another, and I think Paul Thomas Anderson is still one of the greatest filmmakers alive. I just think he almost always creates something idiosyncratic that sits with you afterwards, and this movie is no exception. Number 7, The Long Walk. Out of the 4 Stephen King adaptations that came out this year, this was by far my favorite. And I'm not usually particularly drawn to overtly depressing movies. And this movie really did bum me out with the inevitability of the impending death awaiting most of these kids in this dystopia as they march towards their death. There was at least a couple of times during this movie when a character died and I physically screamed out loud in my own home because I was so upset. But no other movie I saw in 2025 affected me emotionally like that, so I was clearly affected by the film. And I liked that it wasn't all death and gloom. It also had interesting world building, a character study element, and social commentary, as well as some incredible performances, particularly David Johnson and Cooper Hoffman. And their chemistry and their characters' budding friendship amongst all the despair was deeply effective. Number 6, Chainsaw Man the Movie Reze Arc. If you're familiar with Chainsaw Man, then you probably figured out that this movie would be on my list based on my poor attempt at cosplay as Makima. And if you're not familiar with Chainsaw Man, then you probably just think I'm a weirdo. I wanted to dress like somebody from a movie that I liked this year, and it was between this and Aunt Gladys from Weapons. So count yourself lucky that you didn't have to see my cosplay of her. So I haven't read the manga of Chainsaw Man, and I liked the anime, but I can't say I loved it. But Chainsaw Man Reze Arc the movie completely blew me away, pun intended. I really liked the structure of it, with the first act setting up the protagonist Denji's wants and needs, and with the introduction of this new character Reze, it almost felt like a rom-com where Denji is getting a glimpse of a normal life. And then all hell breaks loose in an awesome way for the brunt of the movie, with an onslaught of truly badass action scenes and incredible animation. And I want to give a shout out to that little opening theme song sequence, I love that. The movie also gave me an appreciation for characters that I kind of forgot about from season 1 of the show. But what sent this movie over the edge in my estimation was that emotional gut punch of an ending that fully got to me. And now I consider myself a big fan of Chainsaw Man, and I can't wait for the next season. Number 5, Wake Up Dead Man. So I really liked the first Knives Out movie. The second one, Glass Onion, I thought wasn't quite as good, but I think I enjoyed it more than most people. But for me, Wake Up Dead Man is by far my favorite of the Benoit Blanc trilogy. I love this movie from the start all the way until that awesome Tom Waits song in the credits. I thought the religious theme was really interesting. I liked that it was a pivot away from the first 2 movies that kind of had overlapping critiques of the rich and the elite. But I liked that this film kind of showed both the good and bad sides of religion. It exposed those who weaponize and monetize religion, but also showed people who use it to strengthen themselves. But it was the character moments that clinched this movie for me. Especially Father Judd's whole arc. I thought he was one of the most compelling characters in a movie this year. And I love the way that Benoit Blanc kind of served as a guardian angel figure for him. Also, I don't know if anybody else agrees, but I could watch at least 7 more of these Benoit Blanc movies. Number 4, weapons. I'm gonna try to keep the details of this movie vague on the off chance that you haven't seen it yet, because it's best going in knowing as little as possible. But I haven't seen a movie that builds upon itself and snowballs and escalates as well as this movie does in a long time. I love the way that it uses its postmodern, episodic, almost Pulp Fiction-esque narrative structure to weave its dark, mysterious story in a fascinating way, with each segment being more interesting than the one before it while also slowly revealing what's going on. And the way it all wrapped up was so darkly funny yet completely satisfying. And shout out to Aunt Gladys, she was the MVP. Number 3, No Other Choice. This movie covers a lot of interesting and relevant concepts in its commentary on capitalism, identity, and the impending impact of AI on the modern worker. But I really like that instead of the morality of the story being cut and dry, the protagonist starts as somebody deeply sympathetic, but as he unravels and devolves into murder, he reveals an inherent hypocrisy in his actions. And he's completely oblivious to the parallels to be found between himself and the people that he's killing. I also think that it's interesting that despite what the title implies, this guy does have plenty of other choices at several turns that don't involve murder. But you could also argue that the structure of society and the workplace drove him into this mental state that he now finds himself in. And on top of that, the acting is excellent. I think Lee Byung-hun is my personal choice for favorite performance of 2025. And on a technical note, the cinematography and editing in this movie is top notch. I love those flashy transitions and superimpositions. I also love the ending and the closing images of the film, and I think it's kind of the only way the story could have concluded. Number 2, Marty Supreme. I loved Uncut Gems, and this movie from one half of the Safdie brothers gives the exact same anxiety-inducing string of poor decisions vibe that makes you want to scream, "No, don't do that," as Uncut Gems. And once again, it's a story about a guy that by all means is an asshole, but you can't stop kind of hoping that he'll pull through while watching him hustle his way through bad choices that will inevitably bite him on the ass. I only watched this movie a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking about it non-stop since. There's so many interesting little moments, eclectic casting choices, and quirky touches. Like the movie having an 80s synth-pop soundtrack despite being set in the 50s. I love the ending of Marty Supreme, and I can't stop speculating what the future would hold for the character Marty Mauser. So when I was trying to pick which movie I'd put in the number 1 position, it was really close between the top 3. But when I thought about the movie that I enjoyed the most, I knew it just had to be number 1, Sinners. When the epilogue of this movie finished and I left the cinema, I walked home feeling so invigorated and with a feeling of awe that I just watched a sprawling epic in a way that no other 2025 movie made me feel. I was sold on the story of these guys in the 1930s putting together a juke joint, and I really liked the way the movie took its time to develop these characters and make us like them. And when the movie pivoted to a From Dusk Till Dawn style vampire showdown in the 3rd act, I was fully on board for that too. But I liked that it wasn't just a story about vampires. It's a story about music being a powerful tool to preserve cultural heritage, as well as being a story about how easily culture can be appropriated and co-opted and stolen. And I think the way that message was interweaved with the concept of vampire assimilation was inspired. So yeah, for being a crowd-pleasing, highly enjoyable blockbuster about vampires that also has deep and rich, important themes, Sinners is my favorite movie of 2025. So that's been my top 10 favorite movies of 2025, and until the next one, thanks for watching. It was a wig!